The KLX230R is Kawasaki's trail slash play slash beginner bike for teens and adults. It's super easy to ride, requires very little maintenance compared to a race bike. But if you want to know more specifically if this is the right bike for you, I'm going to break down the specs in this video, what they practically mean, what I like, what I don't like about this, how to know if it's right for you, what to look for when buying one of these, and at the end a brief comparison of this versus the Honda 250F and the KLX230R. First, I'm going to cover the seat height because that's probably the most important thing. And this is a 2020. First came out in 2019. It's the same bike until 2024. The seat height is 36.2 inches. And if you compare that to a tall enduro or motocross race bike, this isn't that much shorter. In fact, the given seat height for the KLX 300, I think, is 36 flat. So this is technically taller, even though the 300 will feel bigger because it's wider. Then this year for the 25 model, it has a 35.6 inch seat height, so over half an inch shorter, lower to the ground. And they also offer the KLX 230R S model, which is the shortened version, which is 34.4 inches. So for this older model with a 36.2 inch seat height, it's going to feel a little bit tall if you're under like 5'7", 5'8", especially if you have short legs like me. I'm 5'6", and I can only get 1 foot down easily. I'm on my tippy toes over here. So if you go like this, 5'6", 27 inch inseam, it's a little bit tall. So if you're in like the 5'5" to 5'7" inch height range, you might want the newer one, and possibly even the shortened version is if this is your first bike, because you don't need that extra suspension. And then the wheelbase is 54.1 inches. If you compare that to other trail or enduro bikes, it's pretty short, so the wheels are closer together. Now that's great for low speeds, learning on. It makes it really easy and quick to turn at low speeds. So if you're riding trails 5, 10, 15 miles an hour, it's great. But once you start riding above 15 miles an hour, or you're riding trails with bigger obstacles or whoops, that shorter wheelbase is going to be a disadvantage because it's going to rock back and forth. Or like when I was in Arizona going up some steep hills, it wanted to wheelie more easily than the other guys I was riding with on the 250 and 450 Husky. So you had to get your weight forward more, otherwise it would loop out on you. Moving on to the engine and power, 230cc, pretty basic air-cooled 4-stroke engine with a 6-speed single cam engine, very smooth power. It has about 18 horsepower, which doesn't sound like much compared to a 252 stroke or a 454 stroke. They have like 2 to 3 times the power, but you really don't need more than that to start out on. Or if you're riding in the woods or tight trails, you don't need more power. And it has EFI, so fuel injection, which I really like. I'm trying to get away from carburetors because they're kind of a pain to deal with the ethanol that dirties up the jets and stuff. So the fuel injection fires right up right away, runs nice and smooth, has very smooth, crisp throttle response. About the only time I had it bog on me is when I was going down kind of a longer, steep hill, and I wasn't using the throttle. And then when I got to the bottom, it kind of had a hiccup. But other than that, going up hills, riding casual trails, never had a bog. I gave it gas, and it accelerated. It has electric start only, no backup kickstart, which honestly, I really don't mind, even if I'm out in the desert, as long as I know the battery is in good shape as it's cranking it over quickly. This thing is going to start. Plus, you can always bump start it if needed. And then the auto adjusting idle is something that I'm not used to. For some reason, Kawasaki wanted to have a higher idle. It automatically adjusts for I don't know what, but it typically idles higher, which helps newer riders learn how to use the clutch so it won't stall as easily. That's great. But the problem is when you're out trail riding, and if you're like me who likes to short shift and ride at a lower RPM, unless you need to rev it out up a steep hill, this thing, when you let off the gas, it wants to keep accelerating, especially if you're at a lower RPM. So if I'm accelerating in 3rd or 4th gear and I let off the gas because I need to slow down for a corner, it sometimes keeps accelerating on me because that idle is higher. It's not only annoying, but it can be dangerous because you can overshoot that corner. And if there's a ledge there, that's not going to be a pretty sight. That's why I got an aftermarket manual adjusting one, which I will put on in a video coming shortly. It has around 10 inches of travel, at least on the regular model. The shortened one has, I think, 9 or a little less than 9. It's not adjustable other than the shock preload, which you adjust the sag for your specific height. Other than that, there's no clickers, no damping adjustment, which is totally fine. Less maintenance, less things to worry about if you're a new rider. Just get on and go. It's nice and plush. It's set up softer compared to a race bike, which is perfect if you're just learning how to ride. You're riding tighter trails, slower speeds. It's going to soak up those bumps a lot better and be more comfortable, where if you had a race bike with stiffer suspension, you'd feel every little bump on the trail and it'd be more exhausting, especially if you have that bad habit of squeezing the bars with your hands. But once you start riding above 15, 20 miles an hour, or the trails are whooped out, you're going to meet the limits of the suspension pretty quickly. But if you're in the 140 to 180 pound range, riding in the woods, tighter trails, this thing is really nice. And if you are looking for your first dirt bike or just not sure what to get, I do offer one-on-one consulting where you talk to me personally. You can ask questions to figure out what size, what type, or what budget is best for you, so that you can be confident in buying the right bike. If you're interested in that, there's a link in the description. Now, what about reliability and maintenance? Well, this is about as low maintenance as it gets. The 4-stroke air-cooled bike, there's no radiators. You basically just change oil when it gets dirty. You clean the air filter when it gets dirty. You keep the chain tight. You put fresh gas in it, and this thing is going to last hundreds, if not thousands of hours. Is it as reliable as a Honda? Well, that depends on you or the person maintaining it. Hondas are known for their reliability, but this Kawasaki could last probably just as long as a Honda if you properly maintain it. Now, how much does it cost? Well, the retail price is, I believe, just under $5,000 plus dealer fees, whatever destination charges, taxes you got. But in the used market, the price comes down considerably more, even compared to the Honda CRF 250F. I'm guessing it's just because Honda has the better resale value. People are more familiar with them. They like the red better. Kawasaki's just don't have quite as good of a resale, which is better for you if you're looking for a cheaper bike. So even though they're $5,000 brand new, you can find one on the used market for probably well under $4,000, even for a like new model. This one has about 50 hours on it, and I would expect to spend $300 to $3,500 for this thing. And then some things to look for when you're buying a used one. The main things are checking the oil. You got the sight glass down here, so when you check it, make sure the bike is upright, and the oil should be between the minimum and maximum lines there. If it's not, if you have to tip the bike way over, that means it's low on oil, and there's a chance that they didn't maintain it as well. And then you can also check the air filter, which is kind of hard to access. It takes more bolts and screws to get off, but if that's filthy, they probably haven't maintained it. And just checking the overall look of the bike, making sure all the bolts are there, they're matching, check the chain tension, making sure all the spokes are there if they didn't ride it hard, because if they were jumping it, spokes are probably going to be bent or loose or missing. But other than that, just making sure that it starts up right away. I like to ask the seller to wait to start the engine, because I like to feel that the engine is cold, because problems are usually most noticeable on the first cold start. You can hear different noises, or if it takes longer to start. Now, a brief comparison of the KLX230R versus the Honda CRF 250F. The main differences are the power and the size. Now, the power curve is pretty much the same. They're both very smooth, very easy to ride, but the CRF 250F is going to have a little bit more power everywhere. I think it was Racer X that did a dyno on both of them, and the Honda had about 2 horsepower more. If you're just starting out, it's not going to make that big of a difference. But if you plan on keeping the bike a while, Honda has more aftermarket parts available to upgrade the suspension and the power. And then the size, the KLX230R is a little bit taller, and it's also a little bit shorter in wheelbase. This makes it a little bit better if you're a tall rider, but it's also not quite as stable if you're riding faster trails with whoops, bigger obstacles, because it's going to bounce up and down a little bit more. Where the Honda, Honda is a little bit lower, a little bit longer. It's going to be a little bit more stable. And comparing it to the KLX230R, that's going to have noticeably more power everywhere compared to this bike and the Honda. And even though the seat heights are about the same, the KLX230R is going to feel a little bit bigger because it's wider, and the 300 is going to be noticeably a little bit heavier. It's not going to be too noticeable when riding it, but when you tip over, if you tip over and you go to pick it up, that extra 30 pounds is going to be noticeable. 230 weighs 254 pounds wet, which means all the fluids and gas ready to ride, which is about 10 or 11 pounds less than the Honda 250F. But the California edition, I believe, is 265 pounds because it has all that extra EPA nonsense junk on it. And if you want to watch my video on the best dirt bikes for beginners, you should check out this video here. Or if you're looking for beginner riding gear for under 300 bucks, check out this video right here. I'm Kelly Fager from MXHideout, and I want you to ride safe so that you have fun for many years to come with your friends and family.